we're going to move on to, colleagues, we've got at least 10 minutes left, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. We're now going by the science and the wonder of technology to zooming up to Dundee, I think. And we will welcome Laura Young from the Centre for Water Law, Policy and Science at the University of Dundee via Zoom. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself in a moment, Laura, and just to say that when division bells start ringing in about 10-15 minutes, we'll be dashing, and it's nothing you've done wrong or said that we don't like. It's nothing at all like that. So, Laura, over to you, please.
Well, I'm Scottish, so I'll try and speak as fast as we are known for. So, hello, I'm Laura. I'm a PhD researcher in environmental science and a campaigner, and I've worked extensively on specifically looking at disposable vapes, but looking at vaping in general over the past 18 months. Very much welcome this bill and support a lot of what has been said, but also think there's room for it taking more action, and happy to be giving evidence today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you're going to hear first from your own Member of Parliament, who's going to ask the first question, Kirsten Oswald. Kirsten.
Thank you very much, Chair, and have kept myself as your Member of Parliament, Laura, despite you being away studying. I know from conversations that you will have a handle probably significantly better than any of the rest of us on the prevalence of vapes within all of our communities, and particularly in areas near schools, in areas near the coast where they can lead to plastic pollution. And I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about what change you've seen over the last couple of years in terms of the numbers, and explain why this is problematic to the environment.
Yeah, I mean, the environmental impact cannot be overstated. They are a huge issue, especially for waste, and we have seen the numbers growing and growing. So Material Focus, an environmental electronics charity, did some research specifically looking at disposable vapes in 2022 and 2023, and the number quadrupled. So in 2023, we were looking at about 5 million a week, and jam-packed inside each and every vape is lots of precious materials, which of course are going to waste after one single use. And we know that this is not something that is being widely recycled, so we know that those are materials that are just going to waste. We're not getting them back. And we also know that this poses a huge risk to our waste workers. These have lithium batteries inside of them, and we've seen some devastating fires already because of these. And I think that, represents what we've been hearing today, which is walking down any high street, you will see the prevalence of these being sold in almost every type of shop everywhere. So we are seeing them being sold everywhere and being wasted everywhere, having a huge impact both on the environment and on the health of people and children who are getting their hands on them.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Great, over to you.
You've already touched on a little bit. Would you like to say a little bit more around how tobacco and vaping products actually impact the environment? Because I think there was an opportunity for the government to probably do a lot more in terms of cigarette butts. I don't know what you want to say about that.
Of course, I mean, one of the obvious things is litter. Every single street has cigarette butts on them, and that is very harmful. We don't want any litter, if possible. But disposable vapes have become an increasing site of litter as well, and they aren't just any type of litter. They are electronic devices. They are very damaging with lots of chemicals inside of them. We've even had people like car garage owners talking about people popping tyres on these shards of metal as they get squashed and run over. So they are very, very damaging. But all the way through the process of particularly vapes, we see a lot of material resource. So things like lithium, copper, cobalt, things that have to be mined around the world, put together for these devices to be used just once before they run out and are thrown away. And I think the disposability in particular speaks to a lot of the other problems. These are made as disposable, they are throwaway, they are cheap. And that also leads to the fact that so many young people in particular are buying them because they are cheap, accessible and throw away. So something that is absolutely an environmental issue with waste and litter is also a big problem in terms of accessibility for young people.
And what impact do you think the bill will have in terms of improving the environmental outcomes?
I think particularly around some of the regulations of how these are designed will be crucial, and I know there will be follow-up legislation kind of mopping up other parts of the issues, and in particular disposable vapes hopefully being banned. But I think it's important that we look at the design. How do we get the most circular economy version of vapes, I think is really crucial. Limiting as much as possible single-use plastic, looking at how we can make them modular, making sure we don't just shove a charging port at the bottom and hope for the best, actually look at how they can be circular by design. And also just on design, I think it's also important that we're beginning to see vapes that are There's the illegal ones, which are to one side, but there are also legal ones, which I believe are getting around existing legislation in terms of capacity. You now see ones that have different cartridges. So it's almost like those pens that you had where you could switch between the inks. You can now do that with vapes, which are being sold legally, and they are getting over the limits because they are saying this isn't one big cartridge, this is 4 small ones. And so we are already seeing the industry innovating, but in a negative way, to get around the legislation. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen when we bring in environmental topics, as well as all the other ones for public health.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Trudy Harrison.
Thank you. I think you've really expertly explained the concerns around plastic pollution from vapes in particular. Talking about cigarettes, what do we know so far about the impacts on nature and biodiversity from cigarette butts? And also, are you aware of any concerns from the air pollution risks on biodiversity of cigarettes?
Yeah, and this is maybe something that has gone under the radar. The number one item littered is cigarette butts, particularly when you look at it by number. And so they have a huge environmental impact, particularly because plastic is inside the filters and the filter is the butt that is left behind. And actually, although there's been a lot of campaigning around the environmental impact of vapes, there has been amazing efforts to raise awareness of the environmental issues around tobacco by organisations like Ash Scotland and the Marine Conservation Society, one of which I know has already given evidence. And I think globally we also need to look at this as a huge industry. So of course, kind of like any other industry, they need to be looking at their footprint and their sustainability measures. And we know that, of course, air pollution is absolutely key to this conversation, and that, of course, has an impact as well on wildlife and biodiversity. So neither tobacco or nicotine products such as vaping are good for the environment. They are very harmful to the environment, and we are really just beginning to see those harms with disposable vapes in particular, but we know cigarette butts have had a long-standing impact on the environment, and they're also just a nightmare to collect. They are so small, so problematic, and on beaches that you'll just see them as much as you see sand. So definitely need a lot more action across both of these sectors.
Mary Clinton.
I think the concerns about the environment are really important, but the other issue about banning vapes is that it sends out a message that vapes may not be safe. And I know that a lot of the vaping companies are trying their best to see how vapes can be disposed of safely. I think you've got these new more super vapes where they're disposable, they're not single use. Would you think there could be any alternative to a ban, or do you think that the ban might deter people from giving up smoking because they think if they're banned then they're not good for you? It's a very complicated discussion to be had about what really should be done. I don't know if you want to comment on some of the things I've said.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing to remember is that vaping is not good for you. It's slightly better than smoking, but let's definitely not push the message that it is good for you. But definitely on the disposal, this is something that actually just last week I got to see firsthand. There's only one place in Scotland that has the capabilities of recycling disposable vapes or any vapes at all. And watching that process, it takes an individual staff member with PPE under a ventilation hood, if you remember chemistry when you were at school, with big PPE, pulling this apart manually with pliers, separating it out, putting lots of it to the side because it can't be recycled, and taking away things like the battery, covering it in this special type of tape to make sure it doesn't combust and burn, because of course lithium is very explosive. So the whole process of recycling one vape takes over a minute for one member of staff, and it is a huge cost, and it's not an economically viable piece of electronic waste to recycle. And we know that there are only a tiny number of vapes actually being recycled. If all 5 million a week that are currently being thrown away in the UK were to be sent to recycling centres, it would, one, be a huge cost to local authorities, who often are the ones collecting these, but also it would take a lot of infrastructure and people hours to actually be processing this. And I will just say, nobody wants to ban things. I certainly don't want to ban things. Nobody started by saying here, these seem like a bit of an issue, should we ban them? We actually went through all of the process of asking all the questions that you've just asked and many others have. What are the solutions? What can we do? How can we raise awareness? But unfortunately, with an item that is just so damaging and so dangerous and is the complete opposite of a circular economy, which is what we are trying to achieve, they just cannot exist. Disposable electronic devices should not exist, and I think that's really important. And now it's the rest of us, it's our job to make sure that the public health messaging comes across clearly, which is one of the main reasons we are banning these is because of the environmental impact and youth access, but we still want to help adult smokers quit smoking and move to really just breathing fresh air. We want to move them completely away from tobacco and nicotine products.
If only that was so simple. Can I
Yes,
just say
go, Mary.
vaping is 95% safer than smoking. I just like to say that.
Mary. Dr. Caroline Johnson.
I proposed a 10-minute rule bill to ban disposable vapes last February, so I'm delighted to see that the government has brought in an SI to do exactly that. And disappointed to hear you say, but I'm not surprised, but disappointed to hear you say that industry are doing their best to circumnavigate the regulations before they're even brought in. So, two questions really. One is, how do we ensure that the regulations are flexible enough that we can stay ahead of such measures? And secondly, I wondered if you could say a little bit about the wildlife effect. The Honourable Member for Penrith and the Borders has talked about puppies picking these things up in their mouths and the danger if they bite into them that they can pose. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about the dangers to wildlife that they pose when they're thrown away.
Of course, and certainly on the regulations, I think we have to think creatively and innovatively about some of the workarounds that they might be doing. We are already seeing the charging ports just being popped on the bottom, which of course might mean the battery can be recharged a few extra times, but if it can't be refilled with the solution, it is still in theory single use and will have to be thrown away eventually. So I think it's about making sure that we look at the build, making sure that they are modular, and making sure that really the circular economy principles that we want to be achieving are set in stone. And I think that means working as best as possible with the retailers and the manufacturers, although that will be really difficult, but also looking to other initiatives, whether that's single-use plastics bans or treaties on plastic. One is, just come globally to an end. Looking to these other initiatives to see what we can do. On the wildlife, I'll maybe just tell you one story, which is a wildlife photographer, a bird watcher, was taking some images of a marine bird doing very normal activities, which was picking up shellfish, what looked like a razorfish, and dropping it from a height to smash it open to get its delicious dinner. But unfortunately, this photographer realised after this young gull had failed multiple times that actually what it was picking up and dropping was a disposable vape. So we're not only seeing domestic animals like cats and dogs and things that we love as pets getting a hold of these and potentially breaking them open, we're also seeing actual wildlife being impacted, picking them up thinking they are shells on the beach and trying to eat what's inside of them. And this is just from the very short time that we've been paying attention and looking out for this, and very keen bird watchers have captured it. So we know that there will be extensive wildlife impacts, and we are only scrambling around now to try and find more evidence, but we know that it's already happening, and that is just one example. And the photographs are on Twitter if anyone did want to go and find them to see them. It's sad, but definitely the reality of what we're seeing.
Thank you, Jo.
Yes, Mary Kelly Foy.
Comment there, I guess, just would you agree that this is symptomatic of our throwaway society that we live in? And we've got vapes, but also plastic toys with Happy Meals. We've got toasters, all small appliances that don't last long enough, and they're thrown away and all damaging the environment. And I know in the river in Durham, all sorts of electronic devices thrown in there that's interfering with wildlife.
It's a fair
Yeah,
question.
absolutely.
It's not in scope of the bill, but it's a fair question. Please, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And, I think just last week, myself and other leading scientists from across the UK published a piece in Science, the Science magazine, and it was a letter all about disposable technology and really using vapes as the example of this is the first in a wave of disposable, cheap tech that is having an impact, and the fact that we need really a global effort to tackle this. And so absolutely that is something that is a hot topic right now, and something that if we don't get a grapple on it now and use vapes as an example of how to tackle it, we will just continue to see disposable electronics, all of which are jam-packed full of things that we need for other devices for a green economy.
Laura, thank you so much for your evidence this afternoon. There are no more questions. We're about to zoom off and vote right now, but you've brought the subject to life with your very colourful descriptions. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.